So good evening and welcome everybody to the Cabinet meeting today, Tuesday 2nd of April. The meeting's been live streamed to the Cheltenham Borough Council YouTube channel, and the recording of the meeting will be held for 4 years. So welcome to any members of the public that happen to be watching on YouTube. I do need to say that we do have these temporary measures in place that have recently come into force, which everybody knows about, and it's in the event of persistent disturbance, I will have no option but to adjourn the meeting and ask those causing the disruption to be escorted from the chamber so that the Cabinet can continue to effectively make the decisions required. The last bit is to say that there's no fire alarm test expected, so if the alarm does sound, we should immediately make our way to the nearest fire exits. I have apologies tonight from Councillor Wilkinson. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Collins.
I need to declare an interest for item 9, the sports strategy, but I'm not sure what type of interest. I am the honorary club secretary for Cheltenham Tigers Rugby Club, and the club are mentioned throughout the report on numerous times. So I would like to actually speak if I'm able to, but if is that a...
It's a pecuniary interest.
Yeah, I just wanted to check what it was. With pecuniary interest, that's fine then. Thank you.
We have 2 sets of minutes this meeting to be agreed. That's the council meeting. So if we start with the minutes of the 13th of February meeting. I think there were a couple of amendments and I know Councillor Horwood, you had one.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I've got 2 actually. Under item 2, where conflicts of interest were declared, it records that I declared a conflict of interest in 7. If I did, then I was wrong, and it should have been 8, because I'm a landlord, not a voluntary organisation. And under item 6, which is the item about Junction 10, there's a sentence that doesn't quite follow, where it says it will take the form of an examination, where the it appears to refer to the Cabinet proposal, but actually the it refers to the examination. So I think it would be better if that was just reworded, an examination will take place, and I've given that wording to Democratic Services already. Thank you.
So with those changes, is everybody happy to agree those minutes of the 13th of February? If I could see a show of hands, please. Thank you. That then takes us on to the meetings for the minutes for the 23rd of February. Are there any comments on those minutes? If not, could I see a show of hands then, please? Thank you. So we have no public or member questions or petitions to put before us tonight. There are no referrals from the Council, Overview and Scrutiny or any other committee, which then leads us on to the report section. The first report is in the name of Councillor Wilkinson. As I said, he gave his apologies for this evening, but he did write me a form of words by way of an introduction that I will propose to read out on his behalf. The ice rink. So the 2023-24 ice rink set new standards for this town and the wider events industry. It welcomed 31,100 visitors, bringing around 1.6 million to the local economy, with 860,000 additional spend as a result of the ice rink. New jobs were created during the Christmas period and other jobs were supported. We pledged that we would not use traditional diesel generators, and we kept that pledge. Instead of our vegetable oil and battery power method provided in partnership with a business based in Imperial Square, we reduced the carbon footprint by a staggering 98% compared to the 2021 ice rink on the same site. This case study is now being shared as an example of best practice, helping other areas reduce their carbon footprint from events. If Cabinet approves the report, there will be work for the Planning Committee to complete. That will involve a variation of the permission given last year to enable us to use that technology again, while we work with National Grid on the long-term ambition to install electrical infrastructure in the gardens. And tonight we're being asked to approve the recommendations, including a financial commitment to an ice rink this year and the delegation of responsibility to officers charged with delivering the project. I'm happy to take any questions and or comments. Any member? Councillor Clucas.
Thank you, Leader. This is an amazing thing to be able to say, and it's this. If you read the report, section 3 and beyond, you will see that some 600 children who would never have been able to afford to have that experience were able to go to the ice rink. Not only that, but those children who were disabled and couldn't go were given that opportunity too. And all I'd like to say, Leader, is we do things for our children in this town that most places can't do. And we do them because the town is run for the benefit of the people, not for the benefit of big business or for the benefit of those who would perhaps be able to accrue power from what they do. So, Leader, I'd like to, through you, to pass on my thanks to Councillor Wilkinson and to those who made that possible on behalf of those 600 kids and on behalf of those disabled young people who were able to have an experience that I hope we will repeat next year, perhaps with more, and I hope they will never forget. Thank you.
I think you mean this year, Councillor Clucas, don't you? This year. Benefit 2024 as well as 2023.
Indeed. I beg your pardon. 2024.
Nearly Christmas already.
Yes, of course. Nearly Christmas, quite. It is for some. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to point out the fact that when I had the ice rink under my portfolio responsibilities, obviously we were working with the residents to try to reduce the problems with the generator in terms of noise. So I think it's absolutely fabulous to see that the next iteration, we have obviously been able to learn from our previous event experiences and the fact that there have been 0 complaints with regards to noise and the fact that we're using innovative technologies using battery storage. And obviously directly from the grid. So I think that's a really, really, really great step forward. And I know from those that work in the events industry always know that you are able to learn from previous experiences. So I think this is great in terms of not only the impact on the environment in terms of the reduction in emissions, the vast reduction in emissions in this case, but also the fact that we're using innovative technologies.
I can't see any other member indicating, so can I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations as they are set out? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item is discretionary business rates relief, and that's Councillor Jeffreys.
Thank you, Leader. Colleagues, in the autumn statement, we had confirmation from the government that this relief would continue. It was a temporary measure put in place during COVID, and it's rolling on. So, yes, nothing dramatic or earth-shattering, just a continuation of what was a relief. We have to use this, the government asked us to use our powers under legislation. You'll read through the report, actually, that there's quite a lot of businesses that actually need this relief still, after all this time. I think you'll read that there's 4,000 properties that are assessed for business rates, and just under 600 of those properties or businesses are entitled to the relief, some £4.4 million worth. So quite a lot of support going in. It is one of those indicative things that I get frustrated with. We're very transactional in some of the things we do in the team, but it's at the behest of government in this instance. I do wonder whether, in all my time in local government, whether I'll actually get to see the long-awaited business rates review. It needs to get reviewed. Hopefully it will come eventually. So yes, the policy is attached, the appendices. I have taken the questions, Leader.
Any member? I see nobody indicating. Do you want to ask a question or a comment? Either. Go for it, Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to note that even though I think it's great that we're getting the funding to be able to support businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector, it is a huge shame that these businesses still need support and have obviously clearly the industries have not fully recovered over the past couple of years with the impacts of the economy and what that has meant for individuals to be able to afford to go out to enjoy such leisure and hospitality occasions. So I really do hope that proper support will be given going forward and that we won't need to use these discretionary business rates going forward.
Councillor Jeffries, do you want to come back at all? I see no other member indicating, so can I see a show of hands to approve the recommendations? Thank you, that's unanimous. That takes us on to agenda item 7, which again is the report of Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. Another transactional and quite simplistic policy in some respects, but it's quite sad. This is our discretionary housing payment scheme. You'll be able to read, colleagues, that it's for those recipients of housing benefit or universal credit that need some additional support. It's not a vast sum of money in terms of, I think, 2023-2024 was 106,000, or just above 106,000. Again, we're fully compensated for that amount of money through the Department of Work and Pensions. It hasn't been updated to the policy itself since 2018, so it is time to update it. There's no major changes to it, just some changes in relation to best practice and obviously the current guidance from DWP. So I'm happy to return that report to Cabinet. Thank you, Leader.
Any member questions or comments? Councillor Atherstone.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to thank Councillor Jeffries for bringing this report to us today. I am just shocked that as Cabinet Member for Housing, the amount of casework I get from residents that are suffering with having being put under no-fault evictions, and those in households that are then having to try to find alternative, more affordable accommodation. And as of yesterday, the 1st of April, the local housing allowance rate did increase after a freeze for many years. And but just today, I did a review of affordability based on the new rates as of yesterday. And across 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 beds, and 4 beds, there is not a single property that I can find using the 4 main big housing apps in Cheltenham that will be fully covered by the new increased local housing allowance rate. So it concerns me that even though I'm very grateful for this additional funding that we have to be able to distribute to those most in need, that quite frankly it's not enough. And yeah, my heart goes out to all those struggling to find accommodation right now that is affordable.
Councillor Jeffries, do you want to come back?
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Atherstone, I share your concerns. It's, I don't know how many decades now we've had a housing crisis in this country, and whilst it's nice that we've got this small amount of money to be able to support those people, it's indicative of a broken system. I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, there are so many different complexities and layers when it comes to how people try and survive with the home they've got. You know, say they move the local housing allowance level up, but actually benefits maybe get frozen, or they get penalised for, you know, working an extra hour under universal credit. So, yes, we've got a lot of problems and a lot of crises still in this country, as much as Some may wax lyrical otherwise, so I share your concerns, Councillor Aston. Thank you, Leader.
I see no other members, so could I see a show of hands, please, to approve the recommendations? It's unanimous. Thank you. The next report is the report of Councillor Clucas on the Employee and Councillor Domestic Abuse Policy.
Thank you, Leader. This report is actually, or what you see before you is actually the first variation in relation to the work that has been being done. It will be shared with key members of staff here at the Council, and it will also be shared with Councillors Shellin and Harman, who are our advocates in relation both to safeguarding and domestic abuse. I think it's good to be able to say that this doesn't just affect staff, but it will also be something which councillors will find is there for them too, should they need assistance. And the other thing I would say, Leader, is that any matter, any complaint will be wholly confidential in the terms of this particular policy.
Any member? I'd just like to make a comment, Councillor Clucas, just about the importance of these types of policies, particularly for, and I'm glad to see that this applies to councillors as well, but actually, if we, by supporting and looking after our people in terms of the staff, etc., that it's really important that they feel safe, that this council recognises and won't tolerate and will do everything it can to support people. So could I see a show of hands, please, to approve? Thank you all. The next report is the report again of Councillor Wilkinson, who is not with us, and this is on our long-awaited physical and activity and sports strategy, which is quite exciting to be bringing to tonight's Cabinet. Again, Councillor Wilkinson has provided me with an introduction, so I will read that out to you. Sedentary lifestyles pose a huge threat to us all. On an individual basis, they put people's physical and mental health at risk. On a wider basis, inactivity leads to ill health, and that has a knock-on impact on productivity, workplace absence, and so much besides. This authority's physical activity and sports strategy will help this borough decide how we enable people to lead active and healthy lives long into the future. Cabinet will recall the approach being taken to the adoption of a sports strategy is phased, and we started work by working with stakeholder groups to define the need from the perspective of a range of different organisations representing as many sports and activities as you might name, including activities and sports focusing on the needs of groups that are often excluded. That initial report was approved by Cabinet last summer, and we then moved on to a more technical assessment of the facilities available. That was carried out by expert consultants. This was a very thorough assessment ranging from sports halls through to cricket pitches and tennis courts and swimming pools, as well as wheeled sports. We are generally well served, but there are specific pinch points in demand, particularly with regard to the availability of outdoor pitches during poor weather. There is clearly unmet demand for all-weather pitches. Looking at our larger municipal facilities, a long-term proposal for renewal of Leisureat and the Prince of Wales Stadium will form part of the action plan that follows this strategy. And working on the future of those facilities is a large piece of work in itself and will take some time. This undoubtedly brings challenges, but it provides opportunities for new facilities and new partnerships, not least because the Prince of Wales is a regional facility and the responsibility for renewal should not and cannot fall solely upon this council. Members can note that the outcomes of the public consultation at Section 7, which demonstrate that the cost is a barrier even among those who consider themselves to be active. And at Section 8, we highlight some of the good work that this authority, in partnership with others, is already delivering, most notably the Feed Cheltenham Leisure Pass, which we believe is an offer unique to Cheltenham. And I would ask members to note that the 5 recommendations cover a lot of ground and set in train further work streams. Anybody have any comments or questions? Councillor Collins.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I'm sure that nobody here would be surprised to hear that I actually really like to read this report, and I'm completely supportive of the idea. Although there are a couple of things I would like to bring to your attention. As I've already told everyone, I'm a member of Cheltenham Tigers Rugby Club, and we have on a Sunday morning, if you want to see organised chaos on a Sunday morning, then come along and watch what goes on, because there's probably 400 or 500 young people who turn up, all the way from under 5 Tiger Cubs, and literally the board is almost as big as some of the people who are playing. And they absolutely love it. And then throughout the day, it rolls sort of from the under 5s to the under 6, under 7s to the older and older. And then we get into sort of the lunchtime, early afternoon, where the actual serious matches are played. And honestly, it's not just on our AGP; it's all over the facility we've got, because we've got 4 pitches. And it is a delight. It really is a delight to see. One observation would be that it's an inclusive sport, so boys and girls play together up until the age of under 11. And unfortunately, there are far more boys that play than there are girls. And when we come to under 11, I suppose there's competing priorities, and some of the girls decide not to play anymore. So there are smaller numbers again, and they have to form their own teams. And quite sadly, a lot of them give up completely because there's not enough to form a team. So that's one thing. So I would encourage, everyone can go and play sport. They don't have to be of a particular type. They don't have to be of a particular gender or of a particular ability. Everyone is welcome in the rugby family. I would say there's another observation. We've started a wheelchair rugby team recently, and they're doing really, really well. They've joined a national league. And as you can imagine, there are, 1,000,001 different types of disability. And the way it works is there are 5 players on a team, and each player is graded as to their level of disability. And it starts at 0.5. And that's the lowest level of ability. And the highest level of ability, someone gets 3 points. And the 5 players together, collectively, can make no more than a total of 8 points. So you have to keep it under the 8-point mark. But really sadly, we struggle to find venues in Cheltenham. There is only one venue that we can regularly use in the whole of the Cheltenham Borough, and that's at Buckharris School. And the reason for that is because it has to be played indoors. And the other criteria is the floor surface has to be of a particular type. So that is the only place that we can get hold of on a regular basis to train and play our matches. And I think that we all need to do more than we are currently doing to make sure that sport continues to be as inclusive as it can be. The last point I want to make, referring to the report itself and to the maps in the report, the Max Associates part. I don't think it's the Max that we know, but Max Associates, from page 115 onwards, for those of you that want to follow what I'm saying. I don't think I've ever mentioned this before, but when it comes to maps and charts, I struggle. I really, really do struggle to follow the information that's contained in it. And if companies like Max Associates want people like me to fully support what they're trying to say and what they're trying to communicate across, they have to make sure that everyone can understand. I don't understand the maps or the charts on probably half of those pages because I can't differentiate the information due to my hidden disability. The irony is not lost on me because as I read through the report, it talks about disability access. And on one page, on 154 of our papers, or page 40 of their report, it talks about the barriers to getting involved. But they haven't even got their own house in order because they're not respecting barriers for people with hidden disabilities who cannot read what they're saying in their own report. So I think rather than preach, that we're dealing with the barriers to be more inclusive, I think they need to make sure that they're more inclusive than they think they are. That's not a criticism of the officers at the council, obviously, because I have brought this up, just about every time we receive a presentation, I bring it up. But I do want to make sure that I don't know how many more times I have to say this. Maybe one day we'll get a report and I can understand everything that's within it, but that hasn't happened yet. So I'm going to keep being patient. But thank you very much, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Leader. I mean, I think one of the great things about this report is how well it really dovetails into some of the work that we're doing within the climate department. So when I took over the portfolio, one of the big questions we started asking ourselves is, what parts of Cheltenham do we love so much that we want to be able to pass them on to our children? Which parts of living in Cheltenham in day-to-day life are the bits that are really important to us when it comes to talking about retrofit and about ensuring that Cheltenham is as good as it is or better for those who come after us? And I do enjoy the bit about Leisure Act, because we're currently having some very interesting conversations that I hope to be able to share with you further down the line about exactly how we make sites like Leisure Act, which are very expensive to run, which does in turn lead to very high barriers to entry, just because the cost of running the place has to be passed on to someone. But actually we're having some fantastic conversations about how climate change and about our work to retrofit that site can allow us to make the site more sustainable and hopefully keep the costs down. You can't have a leisure strategy or any kind of sports strategy that's based on a planet that's not burning. So we're going to have to do our best on this front, and I do think it's really important that we take our broader climate strategy seriously within this regard.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Atherstone?
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I'd just like to say that I find reading the report is extremely insightful, so I want to thank everyone that has worked so hard in producing this, and obviously and thank Councillor Wilkinson. I think it's interesting to note where it's mentioned so frequently for every type of sporting activity, where we as a council can develop our relationships even further with schools in Cheltenham to really maximise every sporting space. I've also thought it was quite interesting to read that actually sports facilities, halls with sort of tall ceilings required for certain sporting activities is not a requirement for sports that I particularly prefer, things like yoga and Pilates. So noting that other spaces could perhaps be located for activities, sporting activities that don't need tall ceilings in order to maximise that venue's usage for sporting activities that do require tall ceilings. So I think there's, and also the fact that, you know, probably need to put a little bit more investment into the west and north of Cheltenham with regards to pitches. So I'm really glad that that's been identified too. So I'm really looking forward to the next stage of this strategy, because I think we've got some excellent material to move forward with. So to thank all the officers and Max Associates and Councillor Max Wilkinson for their work on this report.
Councillor Jeffries?
I've got a negative and a positive. I'll do the negative first, I think. I talked at the budget and some of the crises up and down the country when it comes to local authority, the local authority funding crisis. And there are some towns that won't have this strategy in place and won't have these facilities in place. So, that's the negative, the fact that there is such disparity across the country. The positive, though, is that this is an extensive piece of work, and it just goes to show what the amount of work that's going on in Cheltenham, or the amount of sport and activities going on in Cheltenham. But I just really wanted to, without going into all the different areas, just thank Councillor Wilkinson for working so hard on that free pass, because we've got some of our families in some of our most deprived areas that haven't got access to the facilities, can't afford it. And that pass actually does open a door for them to lead healthier lifestyles. And we know that some people's health outcomes are inextricably linked to poverty. So again, I put my record on, thanks to my record. I know you've mentioned it already, Leader. But Councillor Wilkinson worked really hard to get that arranged prior to this strategy coming out. So I just want to note it again and put on record my thanks. Thank you.
So, one of the things, thank you, Councillor Jeffries, one of the things in this for me that I can't wait for that next step of the journey, really. I know that, one of our playing pitches, which has got 2 playing pitches, it's got a local football team playing on it, but they've only managed to play on that pitch once this year because it needs some uplift, it needs some proper drainage for them to be able to use. But by gathering the evidence that we've gathered throughout this report, that allows us to take that next step forward and really do that assessment on where, you know, things should be pitched, as it were. And I think that was a bad pun, and I really didn't mean that. So, so I'm really excited by the next steps of that journey, and the idea of what we can do to Leisure At. I think there's a few of us, probably not many, but I remember back in 1972 or 73 when Leisure At first opened. And it was a real big flagship venue to go to. It was wonderful, especially the diving pool. But, you know, it's now getting old, and it needs lots of investment. So anything that we can do in the meanwhile, and actually how we can work with some more of our partners and across, you know, not just within Cheltenham, but, you know, we've got some amazing sporting facilities, active organisations, educational organisations that, you know, could we look to partnering with them in different forms. So it's not a key decision, but there are some recommendations. So could I ask Cabinet to show support for? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That takes us on to agenda item 10, which is the Cotswold Beach Special Areas of Conservation, which is the report of Councillor Hallwood.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, well, as one local organisation has asked recently, what have the Cotswold Beechwoods got to do with us? Well, let me explain. First of all, the Cotswold Beechwoods are an area of nearly 600 hectares, so a really extensive area of ancient beach woodland, more or less between Birdlip and Cranham, south of Cheltenham. And as the name suggests, they are dominated by ancient beach woodland. But they also feature an amazing variety of flora and fauna, including stinking hellebores, narrow-lipped helleborines, white-letter hair-streak butterflies, and 780 varieties of fungi in Buckholt Wood alone. It is quite astonishing region of biodiversity, and it's almost our local equivalent of rainforest, and it's very ancient, and it's very well preserved, and there is what's known as unimproved grassland as well, which actually means undisturbed, and therefore a good thing, not a bad thing. Our local planning policies of various kinds committed us to create a strategy in line with government policy to mitigate the impact of visitors to the Beechwoods. And in 2022, the 5 councils that were impacted by this, which is all the Gloucestershire councils with the exception of the Forest of Dean, collaborated in commissioning Footprint Ecology to produce a strategy, which they have done and we are implementing. And that basically takes 2 approaches, as defined by the legislation, which are known by the acronyms SAM and SANGS. SAM is Strategic Access Management and Monitoring, in other words, finding other places for people to go and encourage them to go to it. And that includes everything from rangers to new interpretation and signage to awareness raising and measures like that. SANG stands for Suitable Alternative Natural Green Spaces, which means purchasing or acquiring new areas which can be made accessible as alternatives to the Beechwoods for people to visit, which, because it involves land purchase, is the more expensive option. And the strategy that Footprint Ecology put together details a strategy, but doesn't go into very specific local detail. It does specify the cost of this, which is quite steep, actually, and for every new dwelling, and initially we thought this would apply mainly to large developments, but recent planning decisions and Natural England's own interpretation of this means that it now applies effectively to all new dwellings, so even small developers. The cost that a developer who doesn't do this kind of exercise themselves, which is obviously quite challenging, would be £193 for SAM, £480 for SANGS, to which we are adding £125 as an admin fee to administer this whole process. So it adds up to a bill of £798 per new dwelling. that sounds like a lot, and actually I think it is quite a lot. Having looked at some of the other special areas of conservation around the country, though, it is dwarfed by some of the charges being levied elsewhere. If you're unlucky enough to be trying to build a new dwelling in the Chilterns that is within the impact zone of the Chilterns SAC, you are liable to have a bill of over £6,000 per dwelling. If you're in the Thames Basin, it's over £8,000 per dwelling. So this is not only much cheaper than the average across the country, but very much cheaper than the most expensive. So I'm pleased that our consultants and our officers across the 5 councils have come up with a reasonably economic way to mitigate the impact on this important area. So the first recommendation is simply to adopt formally that. The second recommendation before you is to develop a Cheltenham-specific action. Am I back? I am back. There we go. Right. Thank you. As I was saying, the second recommendation before you is for us to develop a Cheltenham-specific action plan on how we will implement this, this policy within Cheltenham Borough Council. So that can include suitable alternative natural green spaces, and we've taken on Lepus Consulting to look at whether or not there are sites that we own or manage that might be suitable. That work is ongoing, so obviously we can't talk about specific sites yet. But it also includes the SAM side, encouraging people to go elsewhere and look at the green spaces they may not be aware of now. And I think this is a really important part for us, and that's why the recommendation is very specific about trying to raise awareness of less well-known green spaces within the borough, of looking to benefit in particular communities that are most impacted by development. Now, that may include my own in Leckhampton, which has quite a lot of development going on, but of course, most of all, that's in the west of Cheltenham, which is also where some of our least well-off communities are. And the recommendation also talks about those communities with least access to nature. And I think those are really important factors that we want borne in mind when we implement this mitigation strategy. So on that basis, I would like to recommend this report to Cabinet. Thank you, Leader.
Any member got any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Jeffreys.
I have no questions, more comments and observations. Obviously, Councillor Wood explained the Beechwoods, why it should be protected, and rightly so. It's an important area. I just have got some concerns, and I've articulated them to colleagues over the years, I think, and over the months, because all the liability for funding to protect that specific, area of which actually should be, I think, is on a historical national level, the government should pay for that sort of mitigation, those sorts of costs. That being not my beef, it's just that at the moment the costs are going to fall down onto the developers. So once again, we're stuck on this drug of we'll charge everything to development and the impact of development. And if you look at this particular additional cost, well, even though it's reasonable, I think, the way we're setting our levels in Cheltenham, you've also got S106 agreements, you've also got community infrastructure levies, you've also got contributions for education, you've got highways contributions, and even public art. All of those things come before affordable housing. So I know that I flagged this in a meeting I had and with the relevant officers as part of our local plan consultations. I know at some point there'll be a review of the viability assessments when it comes to affordable housing, because I think we may have to make choices in how we spend or how we apply all these different levels of things we apply to developers, and make some choices, because at the moment everything that drops off the list is always affordable housing. And I think there's going to come a point where actually we have to make some tough choices in the future. Maybe me, maybe other councillors in the future, who knows. But we can't keep putting the burden of supporting all these things we want to support across our town onto development in itself. That is all negative, I know, but I just want to put on the record. I am wholly a supporter of this report and the work that Councillor Wood put into it, particularly the Cheltenham plan, or the plan for Cheltenham, the action plan, because I think there is so much we have across the town in terms of green spaces, potential access to, which will mitigate against this the damage and destruction that they're trying to mitigate in relation to the beechwoods. Thank you, Leader.
Any other member? Councillor Hallwood, do you want to come back?
Yes, I will just come back on Councillor Jeffrey's point, because I think he's made a really important point. When we initially knew about the beechwoods mitigation requirement, we were imagining this would be big commercial developers who would largely be footing the bill. And I suppose they have a business model, they are used to these kind of charges. But of course, now that this extends right down to small developers, he's quite right that the cumulative impact of SIL and then perhaps a Section 106 agreement and then this additional charge on top, I know has come as a shock to some small developers who are only bringing forward 4 or 5 dwellings at a time. And so we do have to be mindful of the impact, and particularly the impact, as he says, on affordable housing, which is a strategic priority for us as a Lib Dem administration. And I'm quite happy to ask officers, as they look into this action plan, to look at, in a way, mitigating the mitigation strategy. So there are perhaps things we could look at. I mean, if you think about it, if we levy a charge per dwelling, that is rather an incentive to build large dwellings, because you get more accommodation for a smaller number of dwellings and therefore a smaller charge. If you levied it per bedroom, that actually might mean that you were incentivising more affordable housing, actually, or at least that was on a level playing field, and that smaller dwellings might, in effect, not just give you an extra bill. So there are perhaps things we could look at, and I'm quite happy to, as I said, to ask officers as they bring forward this Cheltenham-specific action plan to look at whether there are mitigation measures that will take account of Councillor Jeffrey's very important point, because we don't want this. It's very great to have a positive environmental impact, but we don't want it to have a negative social impact. And I think as a Lib Dem administration, we have to look at both of those factors.
I can see no other member. Thank you, Councillor Hallwood. Indicating, can I see a show of hands, please, to support as the recommendations? Thank you. That's unanimous. The final report for tonight is that of the Yubico business plan for 24-25, and that's a report of myself. I actually don't propose to really speak massively to this, because it's been through Cabinet, we've had informal discussions, it's been through to ONS. I think, these guys, Yubico, we're very lucky in what they deliver across the county. And I also think that, within the report, plans for the future and future potential growth is really quite exciting in terms of what that means for our residents, and also some more environmentally friendly. So the more that we can recycle on the doorsteps, the better. But in order to do that, we need to reduce some costs somewhere, because actually, when you look at what Yubico do and what that costs this authority, it's £10 million a year. It's the biggest contract that we've got. And they, I'm sure other people will want to make some comments, but I think they do a fantastic job, and I'm really excited to see what's coming forward in the future. Is there any questions or comments? Councillor Hallwood.
Yeah, I would just like to not let this report pass without just actually paying a bit of a compliment to Yubico. I know that we're a shareholder and it's kind of a contractual relationship that we have with them, but I think they deliver a very, very good service, actually. Over time, we have managed to push recycling to record levels in this borough, and that's largely, I think, because of the amount that we now recycle from the curbside. And I know Councillor Dobie has championed everything right down to the last coffee pod being picked up from the curbside. But when you go to other places in this country, you realise how much further along that path we are, actually, and it's a really outstanding record. But also in some of the other services that Yubico provide, I find that, in the invariable complaints about, bins occasionally overflowing with dog poo bags and things like this, that when I raise those kind of concerns, I find a very responsive organisation that very quickly tackles little localised problems like that. And to be able to have an increasingly sophisticated approach to the big issues, but also tackle the little ones, is a testament to very good management. They do seem to have had good management over time, I have to say, but it's continuing, and I think that's I think it's something to be applauded. Actually, we don't always praise our business partners in this chamber, so it's a good opportunity to do so, and I think they've got a very good record, and I'd like to congratulate them.
Councillor Clucas. Thank you, Councillor Hallwood.
Thank you very much, Leader. Just to follow on from what Councillor Horwood said, I've recently had an experience where a number of disabled residents were finding it difficult to recycle. I contacted Yubico, they went to see them, they sorted it. And those disabled residents who were finding it really difficult to sort out and put into the right boxes the recycling were absolutely delighted. So I want to pay compliments to Karen Watson and to Deborah Baker for the work that has been done there. The second point on that I'd like to make in relation to recycling is the amount of food recycling we do. Because food is not thrown away the way it is in so many other towns and cities. It's recycled, and that enables us as a town to bring money in to buy food for our food banks. What a great way to do something. So thank you, Leader. My thanks to Yubico for the work that they do.
Councillor Jeffreys.
Oh, in days gone by when I was a bin man, for a couple of years I did drive around in a bin lorry in this town, and now look at it. I mean, I'm no longer a bin man, but I've been a councillor for a certain number of years. But when you look at this report and the amount of, well, just the amount of information and services they provide, our environmental services have changed completely. I think I did mention the local authority funding crisis earlier on. And again, if you look at this report here, their business plan, it's environmental services with bells and whistles on. You know, again, there are some towns that just aren't getting this level of service as a basic standard. But regurgitating, going back to my time as a bin man, I just want to thank and reckon my thanks, not only for, you know, the management and the people that you normally thank, but actually for all those frontline operatives, because come rain or shine, wind, you know, snow, every weather condition out there, day in, day out. So whilst we get the odd moan and groan from when something goes wrong, you know, the million times it goes right, just want to put my record, my thanks for them. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Doby.
I would just like to say the same thing, really, in terms of the amount of goodwill we have from the Yubico operatives and the amount of can-do attitude that they have. And I'm just thinking about the last year, that what they've been faced with, and just over a year, extreme weather conditions that they've coped with. They've coped with what's been happening during our race weeks as well, and they've improved what they've done. They have shown themselves to be innovative. They've shown themselves to be well-led. They've shown themselves to be reactive, even just recently about the bins in the park. I mean, I contacted them myself, and they were out there within the same day, in fact, the same afternoon. So the goodwill that they have shown, the innovation that they've shown as well, and also the leadership that they enjoy has been exemplary. And it's no surprise to me that Yubico goes from strength to strength, and in terms of the geographical coverage goes from, it gets bigger and bigger. It crosses Gloucestershire now and goes beyond Gloucestershire. And I think that in itself is a tribute to the excellent way that it's managed, but also, at the end of the day, to the very fine workforce that they have, and I thank them from the bottom of my heart.
So I think it's almost academic, but could I see a show of hands to adopt the Yubico? I would like to have, thank you, that was a unanimous. I would like to set us a little challenge, though, if I can, because there's one Lib Dem run authority in Three Rivers, and their recycling rates, if we could match those, we'd be doing brilliantly. So there's a bit of aspiration for the future to come.
Could I just come back on that? That is the aspiration. But nevertheless, in terms of the range of recycling that we do, we're untouchable. Thank
This is a target, and it is. You're right. We have a more diverse collection, but I'd love to see us reach the levels that they have in terms of overall collection. So that said, that leads us on now to the Cabinet Member briefing sessions. So if I look to Councillor Atherstone first.
Nothing for me today, Leader, thank you.
Councillor Doby, you're obviously champing at the bit.
I am champing at the bit because I have some hot off the press good news today, which is I want to brief that work on the refurbishment and enhancement of the Montpellier Gardens public toilets began today. I'm immensely proud that this improved provision, in particular the new Changing Places facility, is finally being delivered, and that's after more than 2 years in the planning. Like the Household Recycling Centre, for which I'm also responsible, this public service is entirely discretionary. CBC doesn't have to provide either, and indeed quite a number of other local authorities provide no public toilet provision at all, which I think is terrible, because it is the right thing to do. Without the public toilet facilities in Cheltenham, many people with disabilities, either visible or not visible, will be restricted in their access to what this festival town has to offer. And your Liberal Democrat Council is committed to delivering for all and to removing barriers that prevent participation for all. And as we've actually heard today, from Councillor Clucas, from Councillor Collins, from Councillor Lewis, from Councillor Jeffries, there's a common thread to all of this, a common theme to be noted here for the record. We are there to enhance the ability of everyone within our town and to the visitors to our town to participate in what we have to offer here. And I think we're doing a great job. And this latest development of the facilities, the toilet facilities within Montpellier Gardens are indicative of that. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Councillor Doby. Councillor Lewis.
I mean, what a tough act to follow. Ian is always single-handedly solving every problem on the planet every time he comes into these cabinet meetings. It's very impressive. I also have some fabulous news. There is a decision that will be seen later on this agenda, but I thought I'd make the most of the time I have now to talk about it. We are very excitedly giving away money, which is one of my favourite activities, to a whole bunch of different businesses and organisations across Cheltenham to retrofit their properties. A lot of them are based on some fantastic, bold ideas, things that we want to try out, and then to take what we learn, bring it back to Cheltenham Borough Council so that we can then share it with other similar businesses. So we've got everything on that list, from much-loved hospitality sites like Curious Cat Cafe. We've got Leckhampton Surgery, when I saw that bid, I found it very exciting. They are under significant financial pressure, just like everybody else in the NHS right now, and we're helping reduce their running costs, which I think will be a fantastic little project. We're supporting the Lido with their next stage of their solar panel and EV charging strategy, which I think will be very exciting. And it is just a fabulous list. You can read the list if you are watching from home in the report pack. But there are too many fabulous businesses and organisations to name, though I will name one more because it's one of my favourite applications we got for the whole series was Cotswold Bed Company, who put their bid in because their plan was to run their manufacturing centre, which is in Kingsditch, on sunshine, which I just thought was lovely. It was one of my favourite little lines in the application. So there are some fantastic businesses and organisations that we will be funding with this money. And we're going to learn some really interesting things, I think, that we can share with similar businesses and organisations across Cheltenham.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Clucas?
Nothing to report this session.
Councillor Jeffries, you're obviously champing at the bits as well.
Well, I've got some exciting news in the world of finance, Leader. I know that colleagues follow the local authority finance sector with a passion. And I'd just like to inform colleagues that our 2021-2022 statement of accounts have been signed off. Colleagues may be aware there's a backlog in the system, so that's been stuck there, but we're moving on to 2022-2023. I just thought that was a really important update for colleagues. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Horwood.
Nothing further from me, but I'd just like to put on my record my thanks to Councillor Lewis for the grant to Leckhampton Surgery. I think helping the planet, helping the NHS and helping local people all in one decision is pretty good achievement. Thank you.
So since we last met, I've got nothing to report other than just a brief one on the what I considered was a very exciting day to go to the MX and showcase where we've got to with that, and actually to welcome the press along, but also, more importantly for me, was to actually have tenants at that event as well, where the media could talk to those but those tenants that are just can't wait to move in. So that was really exciting. And I look forward to having a bigger, wider launch where you can all come along as well, in the summer, perhaps. My final bit tonight is to say a massive thank you for the last, because this obviously is our last Cabinet meeting. We've got elections in May, all of us all up this time, but I want to say a big thank you to each and every one of you for your contribution to us as a Cabinet and us as an administration, a Liberal Democrat administration in this town. And we should all be really proud of the stuff that we're doing and delivering. And hopefully we'll all come back in order to continue that journey. But I also wanted to pay thanks to all the officers, in particular Gareth, our Chief Executive, who's supported us fantastically well over the last 2 years. And you know, please do pass our thanks on. I'm sure you'd agree with me, to all of our staff, all of the staff here at Cheltenham Borough Council. My final one is to say a very big thank you to Councillor Wilkinson for being an absolutely fantastic Cabinet member, consistently there, consistently contributing, and I'm sure I won't be alone in missing him as an individual member of our Cabinet and of our group. And I do wish him the best of British and the best of luck for the up and coming general election. But we're going to miss him as one of our group and one of our Cabinet members. Thank you all. That brings us to the Cabinet member decisions since the last meeting as the final item of this agenda. So I've got Councillor Doby. You've got 2 decisions that you've made. Do you want to do them together?
I think I may even have 3, if you count the one for the contract for Montpellier Gardens, the actual appointment of the contractor. But I've waxed lyrical enough, I think, about that. The other 2 at the end, which are about different types of recycling and collection vehicles. This has been previously agreed, as my colleague, Councillor Jeffries, knows, as part of our general update and refurbishment, and no, that's the wrong word, update process for our vehicles. We do this very assiduously and carefully, and in terms of careful value for money. And I'm glad to say that it's in that spirit that we've made this decision, or these decisions.
Thank you, Councillor Doby. If I turn to Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Leader. The decision itself is quite a mouthful, actually, to appoint Serco Life Limited to deliver professional retrofit services in support of and according to the requirements of the publicly available specification. Oh, I could wax lyrical about this. This is to do with the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund funding. So we've finally been through the procurement and appointed Serco Life to undertake those works for us. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, you've just heard me wax lyrical about the joys of this very exciting funding round, but I will note that it was a very robust process. We got far more applicants than we could fund, and we even had a board to review it. It was a very extensive and tough round of funding. I will admit there were some spectacular projects, but I'm glad that we funded the ones that we have.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. And the final decision today was a decision, well, not a decision I took today, but a decision that I took But before I just do that decision, I wanted to say a very big thank you to Paul Jones, who has been the corporate director as a non-executive on Yubico, and I know he was very well respected and valued on that. But he's come to the end of his tenure, and so the decision I made is that Claire Hughes will now take Paul Jones's place, and I appointed the corporate director and monitoring officer as the non-executive director of Yubico Limited. Was the decision, and I'm sure she'll add as much value as Paul did. That does now bring me to the end of the meeting at 7:10. Thank you all very much, and good luck.